Welcome to Drunk Dog Creative. Today's project is a quick and easy card layout that you can adapt to any paper combination you already have at home. Today, however, I want to highlight the new Masterfully Made Designer Series paper, or DSP, from Stampin Up. This gorgeous paper pack contains 12 sheets of 30 by 30 centimeter paper with 6 double-sided designs and is on sale for the month of June. It coordinates with many of the newly released colors and some old favorites, but today I'm going to use it with the new Blueberry Bushel. A full list of the supplies I used for this card can be found on my blog at drunkdogcreative.com. Let's get started. So let's talk about the supplies we need for this card. I've taken a piece of the Blueberry Bushel A4 cardstock and I've cut it to A5, scored it down the middle, and folded to A6. So this is 105 millimeters wide by 148 millimeters tall. I've also taken a scrap piece which we're going to use for our sentiment tag. I've then taken the Masterfully Made Designer Series paper, and I've cut a piece from the design that is 100 millimeters wide by 143 millimeters tall. And I chose an area on the page that gave me kind of the look I wanted for the card front. I've also got a piece of the basic white thick cardstock that has been cut to 38 millimeters wide by 143 millimeters tall. And we're going to die cut this for our card. For the inside of the card, I've cut another piece of the basic white thick cardstock that is 95 millimeters wide and 138 millimeters tall. I've also put together a little ribbon out of the Starry Night metallic woven ribbon. So there's a bow that I've made of the ribbon, and there's 3 pieces of the ribbon that are about 18 centimeters long each. If you're using a thicker ribbon, you may only need 1 piece. All right, let's start with step 2. Step 1 is cutting all your card pieces, so this is step 2. I'm simply going to put adhesive on the back of this and put it on the card front. Very simple. And I'm going to center it so that I get an even margin all the way around. And just press it on. How easy is that, and how good does that already look? So now I'm going to take my front piece, and I'm going to grab my mini Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine, which I love using because it's right here at my desk. So for these smaller cuts, it's really convenient. And I've got my edge die cut here. Now, as you can see, if you can see this, this is a cutting edge, and this is not a cutting edge. So this cuts the edge off the paper. So I want the cutting edge on the outside because I want to keep this piece with this and cut this edge off. So I'm going to use some washi tape to make sure it doesn't wiggle because this is quite precise. I'm going to line it up so that these 2 bumps are near the edge but not over it, and I'm going to center the die cut as much as I can. And then just tape it down. And then I'm going to make my sandwich, and I'm just going to roll it through the machine. And that should be nicely die cut. Now, because it is an intricate die, there will probably be some bits that stick a bit. So what I usually do is take my pick, and I just try and push on those. And then gently peel this away. There, peel that away. the spirals in here sometimes get caught up. Like that. So then if there's still some pieces, I just grab my sponge and I come from this side. And there you've got it done. Now I'm going to emboss our tag and punch it out. And I'm using the Handmade Tags stamp set, and I've already put on my stamping blocks the frame and the sentiment. And I'm going to stamp this with Versamark and emboss it with white embossing powder. And then I'm going to punch it out. And I always do the frames and sentiments before I punch out so I can align the punch better. So I'm going to get that inked up really well. It's important to make sure that it's fully covered. And then I'm going to stamp it by pressing straight down and lifting straight up. You don't want to rock the stamp. And then very quickly, so it doesn't have any time to dry, I'm going to ink up my sentiment, and I'm also going to stamp it and pull it up. Then I'm going to hold it over my tray and sprinkle my embossing powder on it. I'm just going to move it, and then I'm going to tap it, and I flick the back to get any excess off. And I can move that aside and get my heating tool, which I've allowed to warm up. And I'm going to come in and heat emboss this. And my sentiment is stamped. And I'm going to set that aside to cool down a little bit while I put everything away. Now the next step I'm going to do is put the ribbon on this. This piece is going to fit right against the edges of that DSP, but I want to put the ribbon and the bow on it. Now there's two ways you can do the ribbon. You can just lay the ribbon along the white and then wrap the end around the end and affix it to the back, and that's fine. But I'm going to actually punch a ribbon slot, and this is using my trio punch, and this here is a ribbon slot, and these are two different corners for papers. So what I'm going to do is mark with a pencil exactly where I want that ribbon slot to be. And I'm going to line it up on my grid paper so that I can get it the same on both sides. So I want that slot to be along this line and in the middle of that square. If I do the same here, it will be along this line and in the middle of that square. So I've basically given myself two little X's. I turn my punch over and I fit my page into it until that square shows in the window, and I hope the camera can pick it up. And you can see that there's a line here and here, so I line that up to the vertical mark so that I know I've got my punch roughly where I want it. And I just simply punch it out, and that not only takes away my pencil mark, although if there's a tiny bit left like there is, you can just erase that off. And I'm going to do the other side the same. I'm going to just line it up until that horizontal punch is in sight, the horizontal line, and the vertical line is lined up with those lines. And then just punch it out. And then I can take my eraser and just take off any mark that's there. Now, this is how I do my ribbons when I'm working with really thin ribbons like this. I put a tiny little bit of tape in the middle, and I lay my ribbons where I want them. Because these are so thin, I'm doing 3 in a row. This one, it caught a little bit in the middle, which you can remove later. So there's my 3 in a row. And then I'm going to pull them through the ribbon slot. And again, I use my pick tool to do this. Just flip them through. Same on the other side. And then I turn it over. And then I run a little bit of tape right under where the ribbons are. And I just gently pull them taut and stick them down to that piece of tape. And then I can kind of pull them from the front to make sure they're kind of where I want them. If that's not exactly centered, I can just pick them up and recenter them. And then put them down here. Now I usually clip off some of the excess end, not all, but some, so there's not a lot of bulk behind the card. To affix this to the card, I run tape over the ends of the ribbon, which traps then some of the frayedness in. And I just add tape wherever I think it needs it. Sometimes I have to play with it a little. And then what I'm going to do is line this up so that it is exactly along the top, bottom, and side margin of that DSP. And then I can just rub out any excess tape that I don't want. And that's my ribbon. Now to affix the bow, I'm going to use what I call, or what Stampin' Up calls, the mini glue dots. You can tell how well used these are. These are genius for affixing ribbons and bows and embellishments. Now you can either use your pick tool or your flat-bladed tool to pick one of the dots up off the paper. Turn your bow over. I tend to pull my legs down and I place my dot right over the middle. And then you can just put the bow down in the center and trim those legs to however long you want them. So now you've got your beautiful cutout, your ribbon, and your bow. And the last thing we have to do is affix the sentiment tag. So now I get my Handmade Labels punch and I open it and I keep it upside down. And I feed the paper into it and I line it up. So now I can punch it fairly precisely, whereas if I punch it first, it's harder to line the stamp up than the punch. Once I have it where I think I want it, I simply punch the tag out and my sentiment is ready. And I affix it to the front. Now I'm going to affix it with what we call dimensionals, which are these wonderful guys. They also come in black and mini size. They're like foam tape, but they're smaller, more precise, and easier to work with. I, again, probably used more than I should. I'm a little bit heavy-handed with adhesives. But I put one in each corner and one in the middle to support the middle. Just like that. And you just peel those off. And you take your label and you center it where you want it and press. And that's the front of your card made. It is that easy. Now, because this is blue, that's where we take this other piece of cardstock that we cut and we can simply affix it in and leave it straight like that. Or you can use your trio punch to either cut fancy curved corners or simple chopped corners. So I'm going to use the chopped corners for this one. And I just put my cardstock against the guides and do all 4 corners. And then I've got my inside. So again, just adhesive. And line it up however you want it with the margins. Press it down, and your card is done. Now in the beginning, I showed you a different card. This is another way of doing the sentiment. I just simply cut a rectangular piece of cardstock out of some scraps that were left over from other cuts, and again, stamped a message. This is from the wonderful stamp set called Courage and Faith. And so that's yet another look. So really, you can adapt this card to whatever you have on hand. I also added some flat sequins to this one, just to give it a little bit of pop that's not overwhelming or overpowering, because this background is beautiful enough, but it just gives it a little something. So you can go simple, or you can then start to layer more onto it. But that's how you make this layout.
Wow.